All right, it looks like I'm live. So I'm just going to get rolling then, unless Facebook tells me that I'm not live. Anyway, this is the Dev Rev, episode 1. And just to get started, I want to introduce the kind of the topic and the idea behind this particular show. First of all, I wanted to do something on YouTube. I wanted to do something with video. I've been putting this up on YouTube or Facebook Live. So if you want to go to Facebook and like the devchat.tv page, that's where I'm putting this up right now. That may change. I may create a page for the Dev Rev. I don't know. Figuring that out. I'm also setting up an RSS feed so that you can get it. So anyway, check that out. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Charles Max Wood. I live in Utah with my family, and I have been a software developer for the last 12, 13 years. I started a show with a number of other people about 8 years ago called the Ruby Rogues. It was a collaborative effort starting it. I've had a few people criticize my approach to talking about it. I want to make that clear that, it wasn't just me. I did take on the primary role of producer and, either edited it myself or paid somebody else to edit it. And eventually Ruby Rogues grew into devchat.tv. And devchat.tv is essentially a collection of podcasts that help developers find freedom in the way that they write code and the way that they pursue their careers and the way that they live their lives. And so, I'm actually changing the focus of some of the shows to be a little bit more in line with that. But some of our better known shows are Ruby Rogues. JavaScript Jabber is another one, Adventures in Angular. And, I do interviews with developers and kind of capture their story. You can get those on my Ruby story, my JavaScript story, and my Angular story. So I've been podcasting for a long time. And I just wanted that video component. I wanted to be able to talk to people and really just share where I'm at. But at the same time, I went through a change in my development career that I want to talk about for a minute. And then I can parlay that into exactly what I'm after with this show. So to start out, I have a degree in computer engineering. Now that's probably the least relevant thing I'm going to say this whole time, just so you're aware. Here, let me adjust that a little bit. I'm not in love with having a college degree, but that's the direction I went. I graduated, and when I graduated, I got a job at a company here in Utah that did backup software. And my computer science classes felt like kind of like building toys that nobody was ever going to use. And that was a major issue for me as far as fulfillment. So I didn't go into programming as my primary means of supporting myself. I actually worked in operations and helped run a data center and things like that. That was my job at the university. And then did systems administration. And that was very fulfilling because I got work done that meant something. So anyway, I graduated. I ran the support team, the tech support team for that company for a while. And this is where customers would email in or call in with problems and we'd help them out. And while we were doing that, my coworker and I ran into this problem. And the problem was that we were answering emails using Thunderbird on 2 separate computers. And we'd find that I would start writing an answer to something and then realize that he had already answered it or vice versa. And our load was such to where that kind of time wasting really became a major issue. And then they opened up phone support because they were launching a pro product, a pro version of the product. And anyway, so we decided, let's build a system that will help us grind through the email. So we started building it in Ruby on Rails. And lo and behold, I figured out that building an app that actually saved me a ton of time was something that was very fulfilling. And the more that I worked on this system, eventually we added in like a knowledge base and we tracked phone calls out of the asterisk phone system and things like that. I realized that this was really cool and really fun. And that was kind of my first foray into writing code that actually meant something. And that's kind of the beginning of this idea of freedom. So the show is called the Dev Rev, and it's the developer revolution. And the idea is to allow developers to figure out how to create that freedom. And for me, the freedom was, hey, I have this superpower, writing code, that allows me to solve problems. And so I created that level of freedom. Eventually I left there. I went and worked for a consultancy, and that was also really terrific because, again, I had more freedom. Like, I would show up at the client's office and they would just leave me alone to write code, which was cool. I went from there to another company that did lead generation, and I became a team lead. Started hosting some of the meetups that were local. We had some of them at the offices for that company. Then eventually I moved on to another company that did crime data and things for police officers, and also put the crime data up publicly so people could see where the crimes were happening in the areas around them. And I worked there for about 6 months, and then that company had some financial issues and wound up laying me off. And I went freelance. And going freelance was another level of that freedom, right? Now, during all of this, I had the ability to learn. Some of these companies sent me to conferences. I spoke at conferences. I spoke at the users groups. I was really involved in the community. And I was able to do a lot of that because my employers supported that. And then when I went freelance, I kind of got to a whole nother level of that because I could pick my projects, I could pick my clients, I could pick the things I wanted to work on. I was making more money as a freelancer than I was as a regularly employed software developer. And so all of these things paid off, but I got to the point where I really, really enjoyed that freedom, to the point now where I really don't. I get calls from recruiters that want to hire me. They're like, hey, we got this full-time job. And I'm just not interested because I have this whole nother level of personal freedom. And it's a huge, huge thing for me. And anyway, this has kind of come full circle now because I started writing a book about how to find your dream developer job. And part of the process there was interviewing a whole bunch of people who were trying to find a developer job. A lot of them were trying to find their first job. A few of them were just trying to find their next programming job. And they'd had a history kind of similar to mine in some ways, in that not all of the jobs were jobs that I really enjoyed being at. And so there was some aspect there of their job that was hampering them in some way from getting to where they wanted to be. And I realized, you know what? There's a lot out there, and we have a lot of options as software developers. And so I want to talk about how to gain that freedom to go do what you want, to write the code you want, to learn what you want, to participate in open source if you want. Or if your idea of freedom is I clock out at 5 a.m. and go surfing, or go hang out at the beach, or go spend time with my family, or go hiking or mountain biking, because I live in Utah, so that's a different thing, or skiing, or whatever, so you can have that and support the lifestyle you want. Some people are going to want to be able to go found companies and pursue some kind of financial thing, or get a sense of fulfillment from building a company. And the other end of that is some of the jobs I worked at, I had horrible bosses. And so, just not to deal with that at work, right? Or I had to write software in systems that I wasn't excited about because they were dictated to me by clients or employers. And so you have all of these different angles on what freedom is, and I want to talk about those, and I want to give people concrete ideas on how they can build toward that. So we're going to talk through a lot of these things and talk about some of the lifestyle and career and code and all of these other things, and just talk about how we can get more of what we want and less of what we don't want, and how we can generate the freedom to pursue those things. Now, I don't expect that everybody's idea of what they want is going to remain the same. It hasn't for me. I mean, when I got my first developer job, my ideal was essentially to eventually, I think, become a team leader, a CTO. And now that I'm running my own company around podcasts, you can imagine that my idea of what I want to accomplish is a little bit different. And so I want people to be able to explore that as well and kind of get this vision for where they're headed. Maybe get some ideas of some of the values that they have for their career, and then just get out there and knock it out of the park, and be able to say, you know what, this doesn't line up with the vision I have. This doesn't line up with the values that I want to have at work, or, in my open source or whatever. And so I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I also want to empower people to take ownership. And I'm going to talk about ownership in a minute on the next episode. But anyway, in total, that's what I'm after here, is I'm after empowering all of you out there in developer land to grow and become whatever you want to be. And so there's going to be some focus on technologies, on tools. There's going to be some focus on personal growth. There's going to be some focus on like process and things like that. And we're just going to get into all of this stuff and figure out how we can get people to where they want. So what I want you to do is either on the Facebook post or on the post on devchat.tv where I'm going to put this up, or on YouTube, leave me a comment. And I'm really going to participate in the comments, because this is the stuff that gets me fired up. I mean, we talk about Ruby and JavaScript and Angular and all of these other things on the other shows, and I'm definitely interested in that. But having people actually go, okay, I can enhance my career, I can make a better life, that gets me fired up. That gets me going. And so I really want to help you do that. So what is freedom for you? What does freedom look like? And this may, for some people, if they've really thought about it, they may go, oh, well, I want a job like this. I want to work for a boss like this. I want to have these kinds of things. I want to make this kind of money. And for other people, they're going to look at it and they're go, I don't know. And that's okay too. I mean, maybe it's just the next step, right? So the next step, freedom for you, is I have a developer job where I make $60,000 a year, and I can quit my job where I make 20, 30, 40,000 a year, right? So it's that initial step, that financial freedom, and maybe just the permission to become an expert or a professional. And just to illustrate that, I have a friend, Brandon Hayes. He's become fairly well known in the Ruby community, a bit in the Ember community. And yeah, I remember he was a marketing guy out here in Utah, and he essentially went to lunch with myself and a friend of mine, Dave Brady. If you've listened to Ruby Rogues for a long time, you'll know who Dave is. And we just sat down, and for, I don't know, like a half hour, he basically just told us how he wanted to get paid to write code. And if that's your idea right now of freedom, that's awesome. And then as you get in and you start getting paid to write code, then you can start figuring out, I really identify with these kinds of problems, or I really want to solve these issues in the community, or I really want to contribute in this way to society. And you can get a little bit more clarity that way. So anyway, in the comments. So right now, they should be right below where this video is at. Go down and write a comment. It can be a long one. It can be a short one. And yeah, just let me know what freedom means to you. And I'm hoping to start covering that when I record next week. But this week, we're just going to start off with some of the basic concepts, and then we'll go ahead from there. So leave a comment. Go ahead and subscribe. There should be subscribe links somewhere on this page. Yeah, I'll come back with another episode next week. Oh, this is probably also going to be a semi-daily show. I don't want to commit to daily or week daily, but it's going to be a few times a week at least. I'm going to try and do 5 days a week, but I don't want to commit to that. So anyway, there we go. So there's our first show. Go ahead and subscribe and leave us a comment. And yeah, I will come back with another episode. I'm going to record 3 or 4 episodes today, and then I'll give you all a few days to leave me a comment. So we'll be back with another episode, and we're going to talk about ownership. All right. Bye.